Madwa, Panua Jerusalem, stand up for Jerusalem. Blessing of the Sabbath. Barakatha Yahweh, Basham, Yahushay, Asheray, Nathan Nawa, Ashabeth, Bashalawam, the water, Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the Sabbath and peace. Thank you, so be it. The Aliyah Asherai Machad, Psalms 121. Leave it off. Let's go to background noise. Leave it off. Anya Ryan Mayemya Oh Hariam Mayan Yabawa Azaria Yabawa Maya Hawe Shai Shai Shamayam Warataza La Yanathan Lamawat Regalia Yela Yanawam Shashwa Marka Hanela Wala Yeshan Shashumar Yeshrele Yahweh Shemaria Yahweh Tazalia Ayo Yim Yawumam Hashemash La Kaya Wayarak La Balayala Yahweh Yashmaria Makam Rai Yashamar Napashya Yahweh Yashamar Habalakya Wabawaya My Fa I will Basham Yehoshai for what Aman.
Psalms 121. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help coming from the Lord which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. Amen.
Amen. Shema Yasharel, hero of Israel. Shema Yasharel, Yahweh, Elohim, Yahweh, Echad. Shema Yasharel, Yahweh, Elohim, Yahweh, Echad. Shema Yasharel, Yahweh, Elohim, Yahweh, Echad.
Deuteronomy 6:4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Amen.
Amen. Tapala Yahweh, the Lord's Prayer. Abinawa Shabbat Shemayim Kodash Hayya Shamka Yahweh Malakwavka Taba'a Ratazawanka Hayya Aisha Barataza Kaba Shemayim Natamanawa Lacham Yawam Zed Wasalak Nawa Kabawaf Nawa Kasalak Nawa Kabawaf Yanawa Wala Abiyar Nawa Oh Messiah one Abo Hawashai Nawa Murakaya Laka Hamalakwa Wa Allah Wa Thapara Wa Walam Aman.
Matthew 6:9. After this manner, therefore, pray, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
Amen. Ha'asharamatazawa, the Ten Commandments. La'ab,
La'ab,
Yahayab,
Yahaya,
Lakab,
Lakab,
Alahayim,
Alahayim,
Akariam,
Akariam,
Alpanyat,
Alpanyat,
La'ab,
La'ab,
Thaishad,
Shaishah,
Lakab,
Lakab,
Pasol,
Pasar,
Wala'ab,
Wala'ab,
Thaibadam,
Rabadam,
La'ab,
La'ab,
Thalakwaka,
Talakwaka,
Shamwab,
Shem,
Yahawab,
Yahweh,
Alahayaka,
Laika,
Lashawab,
Lashua,
Zakar,
Zakar,
Ath,
At,
Hayawam,
Hayawam,
Hashabath,
Hashabat,
Laquadashwad,
Lakodashwa,
Kabad,
Kabad,
Abiyaka, Wa
Abika,
Amaka,
Wa Amaka,
La'ab,
La'ab,
Theratazak,
Teratazak,
La'ab,
La'ab,
Thana'ap,
Tana'ab,
La'ab,
La'ab,
Thaganab,
Taganab,
La'ab,
La'ab,
Thainad,
Tainam,
Shakur,
Shakor,
La'ab,
La'ab,
Thachamad,
Takamad,
Ko,
Kad,
Asherah,
Asherah,
Lara'aika,
Laraika,
Amen.
Amen. Exodus 22. And the Lord thy God, which hath brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and holiday. Honor thy father and thy mother, that their days may be long upon the Lord, upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Amen.
Amen. Yeshua, be seated. Barakatia Hawa by Shimi Hawashai, Sharonathan and our Paria Gapan Tuara Aman. La Yahwa by Shimi Hawashai of Yashra. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. Ahmad Panyua Jerusalem, stand face Jerusalem. Barakata Yahweh, Agado, Rakawam, Abiyar, Wanawa'ay, Alyawan, Malak, Shal, Shamayim, Warataza, Wako, Dabarium, Kayayam, Wagam, Amashiach, Mayahawa, Arawanawa, Ahabnawa, Apalay, Yawaitaza, Yahawisha, Zakarnawa. Yahweh Bartazawan Ainka Yash'Allah Zarnawa Banai Wazap Yash'Allah Al Nanawa Yam Yan Naifa Kayawam Yam Makwadam Babakushai Shalak Mike Allah Watazawadak Allahayim La Maganawa Rapharnawa Washamar Ilnawa Bakur Shalak Haroka Shal Yawashai Lanawa Ala Madnawa Rabian Kakamai Fabawana Wada Shal the Barka Basham Yahawashai Fawada Them Yed Waiwalam Amen. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, the great, merciful, mighty, terrible, most high power, King of heaven and earth and all things living, and also the anointed from Yahweh, our Lord, our friend, the wonderful counselor, Yahweh Shai. Remember, Yahweh, favorably your people Israel. Help us build and gather Israel, most high, we beg you, right now, like the days of old. Please send Michael and righteous powers to protect us, heal us, and watch over us. Mainly send the spirit of Yahweh Shai to us to teach us much wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of thy word. In the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you, always and forever, so be it. Repeat the Hebrew only. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the law. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Natan Lanawa, Hathawarat. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us light to see. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Natan Lanawa, Awar, Larawat. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the ram's horn to call the people. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Natan Lanawa, Quran, Hayo, La Korah, Ha'ain. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the olive oil to anoint Israel. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Natan Lanawa, Hasheman, Zayef, Lamashak, Yasha'Allah. Yishabah, be seated. Okay, so Shalom Yasharallah.
Shalom.
So Shalom, everybody that's here in Philly. Shalom, everybody watching on live stream, and Shalom, everyone listening in on teleconference. Welcome to High Shalakanas, or the Congregation of Israel, where we teach that the so-called, I should say, the descendants of slaves, as well as the indigenous peoples found in North, Central, South America, and the Caribbean, mainly make up the southern and northern kingdoms of the 12 tribes of Israel, and that we fall into a lower state politically, economically, even religiously, because we broke the laws of God found in the Bible, given to us by Moses, and that we come out as lower state that we fall into by turning back to these commandments we broke by following Jesus Christ as our example, who did no sin, neither was God found in his mouth. And as also as he tells us, he that believeth on me, as the scripture has said, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. That's St. John 7:38. So we have to believe on Christ as the scripture has said, because you have many that call themselves Christian in word, but when it comes to the deeds of being a Christian, they fall short. So when we do that is by keeping the Sabbath holy, which is every week from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. Today we're going to be going through for our Sabbath reading 1 Samuel chapters 18 and 19. Once again, 1 Samuel 18 and 19 is going to be today's reading. As if you haven't watched with us before, you find that that's what we do on the Sabbath, our particular branch of Christ. We go through a Sabbath service, and that's going to be our reading. And my name is Nabia Zerbabal. I have the privilege of going through the Sabbath service with you guys today and going through these chapters and giving a sense to hopefully cause everyone to understand the reading. It's put for your records that according to the Gregorian calendar, it's July 9th, 2022. But then according to our calendar, it would be the 4th month Sorry about that. According to our Hebrew calendar or solar lunar calendar, it would be the 4th month and the 11th day. Once again, the 4th month and the 11th day is what the calendar would be according to our calendar. So let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 18. Okay. So last time, a couple of Sabbaths ago, we went through this before. We went through a great feat, a very famous event in the scriptures, where David, a man of faith, a young man of faith, went up against a mighty enemy of the heathen named Goliath of Gath, right? Who came out of the Philistines, right? One of the Hamite families related to Mizraim, or the so-called Egyptians. They're like a group that came out of them, a subfamily, if you will, when you go into the table of nations. So him being much stronger, mightier, but through David's faith and the Most High with him, he was able to take out this strong Goliath, right? And he used tools he was familiar with, but the Most High made the most of them, right? As far as using a sling as opposed to like a sword and spear, like other proper warriors, since he was still a young man and mainly tended to the sheep to protect the sheep. So the Most High wrought a great victory for us in that day. As Saul put the challenge out there for any Israelite that if he did it, he would give them a certain reward. He said he would make his family free in Israel, and he would give him his daughter Michal for a wife. Let's go on in 1 Samuel 18 and see what happens after this. Now that David's in the front lines now, and he's center stage, right? He's got the attention and the adoration of Israel at this point after completing this great feat of defeating this mighty foe that a lot of Israel was afraid to go against. So now 1 Samuel chapter 18 and 1, it reads, "And it came to pass, when he had made an end of speaking unto Saul, that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul." Right? So Jonathan had a deep respect, adoration for David, who is Saul's son. Right? That's what it's saying here when it says his soul was knit with the soul of David, same way that you would knit fabrics. It says in verse 2, "And Saul took him that day and would let him go no more home to his father's house." Right? So remember, that's part of the king's ability. Remember, that goes back to 1 Samuel 8. When the people vied for a king, Samuel gave them the conditions. He said, okay, if you want a king, fine, but he can call your sons and daughters to work for him, right? To be in his army, or to be in his court, or to work in his on the grounds of the king's dwelling, right? Whether it be like a cook or someone who works with like the gardening, things like that. He could call them into power. He can call them under him at his whim, be it sons or daughters. So clearly he sees David and sees his value. So he said, oh, you're going to be with me now, right? But then it says in verse 4, "And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was upon him and gave it to David, and his garments, even to his sword. and to his bow, and to his girdle. So all the things that Jonathan had as being the son of the king, he gave all those things to David, right? To have, right? Just to show his appreciation for him and his love for him, right? But yeah, as far as the powers of the king, I guess we can get that real quick and then we'll read on. Let's go back to 1 Samuel chapter 8. I'm not going to read the whole thing, I'm just going to read the section that I was referring to. So this is 1 Samuel chapter 8. I'm going to start from verse 10. So 1 Samuel chapter 8 and verse 10, it reads, And Samuel told all the words of the Lord, or Yahweh, unto the people that asked of him a king. Verse 11, he said, This will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen, and some shall run before his chariots. Right? So going to the powers now of a king, if we wanted one, these are the powers that he has, right? 12, and he will appoint him captains over thousands and captains over fifties, and will set them to ear his ground, right, as far as farming, and to reap his harvest, and to make his instruments of war and instruments of his chariots. So now, working as like a smithy, right, working with different minerals to forge things, right, as a blacksmith. It says in verse 13, and he will take your daughters to be confectionaries and to be cooks and to be bakers, right? So now take the daughters and have them work in the kitchen to prepare for certain things, right? As far as food, as well as different types of herbs. It says in 14, and he will take your fields and your vineyards and your olive yards, even the best of them, and give them to his servants. And he will take the tenth of your seed and of your vineyards and give to his officers and to his servants. So he can require a tenth now, just like Aaron and Levi as a whole, really, not just the house of Aaron, require a tenth of all Israel, right, to supply them. Now he can require a tenth as well. So hope you weren't mad about, only be able to use 90% of your resources. Now it's down to 80, right? But this is what you wanted. Everything has a price, right? Everything has a cost. Not to say the king doesn't have value. Of course he does. But then he's going to need to be supported. So same as now you're going to be giving a tenth to Levi. Now you're going to give it a tenth to the king and to his court, and everything that supports the king. It says, and he will take your men servants and your maidservants and your goodliest young men and your asses and put them to his work. He will take the tenth of your sheep, and ye shall be his servants. And ye shall cry out in that day because of your king, which ye shall have chosen you. But the Lord will not hear you in that day. So he already knew Israel. Once they, a lot of times it's like a young child. You think you want certain things until you get it and you realize, oh man, there was a lot of work that goes into that, right? Or a lot of sacrifice that goes into what I asked for. But it's like, hey, it's too late now. You asked for it, now you got it. So the Most High always had that foreknowledge. But he humored us, right, when it came to certain things that we asked him for. So that was 1 Samuel chapter 8, 10 to 18. I just read that just to show that Saul had that power, right, to call David into his care, right, or under his into his court. So now 1 Samuel 18, reading on in verse 5. And David went out whithersoever Saul sent him and behaved himself wisely. And Saul set him over the men of war, and he was accepted in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants. Right, so David behaved himself wisely. Saul set him over the men of war, right? Gave him a key position. I think in the last chapter talks about how he made him also even his armor bearer. So one would bear his armor, right? Which was a role that was always near kin to a warrior of high stature, whether it be a king or a captain of the host or a captain of some sort. So he gave him this responsibility. And now we see that he's got good rapport with the people, right? So this is like a byproduct of behaving yourself wisely. It causes things to go well with you, right? As far as your situations that you're in and the people that you have to deal with. Verse 6, and it came to pass as they came when David was returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, referring to Goliath, who we read about last chapter, that the women came out of all the cities of Israel, singing and dancing, to meet King Saul with tabrets and with joy and with instruments of music, right? So women came out to celebrate because this was a great victory, right? It's almost as reminiscent of when we first crossed over the Red Sea and the Most High demolished the Egyptians that tried to come after us, and how you read about Miriam, Moses' sister, getting the women together and getting instruments together, and then singing that song. We read about the Song of Moses in Exodus 15, right? Because of the great victory that the Most High had delivered unto us. But it says in verse 7, and the women answered one another as they played and said, so they kind of did like a call response, however the song went, right? Where one group says the one verse and another group says the other verse in response, right? And you guys are music aficionados, you know about call and response, right? When it comes to certain composition. It says, once again, verse 7, the women answered one another as they played and said, Saul hath slain his thousands and David his 10,000s. Uh-oh. So Saul's being accredited for slaying thousands, but David is 10,000s in this song that they sang, right? It says in verse 8, and Saul was very wroth, and the saying displeased him. And he said, they have ascribed unto David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed but thousands. And what can he have more but the kingdom, right? So this saying didn't rub Saul the right way, right? Because he's the one that's supposed to be king, right? He's the one that's supposed to be the top man, right? And he still is. But in this song, you see David being given credit for the slaying of 10,000 as opposed to thousands. And he didn't take this too well. And remember, all these things that we're going to read on in these chapters in Samuel's, they're all pretty much setting the stage, because remember, going back into 1 Samuel 15, it was already told Saul through Samuel on the Most High's behalf that what? The Most High was going to pick his neighbor who was better than him, because Saul didn't wholly follow the Lord his God, right? And following his commandments. So this is all just the stage being set. As far as his neighbor, didn't say him by name at that time back in chapter 15, but it's this figure here, David, as far as him bigging him up. If you can't help it, then you can just turn it on. It says in verse 9, and saw I David from that day and forward, right? So now Saul's got his particular eye on him now, right? Now instead of him seeing him as like a great companion, right? A great soldier in his army. Now he's looking at him like, oh man, competition, right? That's why he said, what more can he have but the kingdom? It says in verse 10, and it came to pass on the morrow that the evil spirit from God came upon Saul, and he prophesied in the midst of the house. And David played with his hand as at other times, and there was a javelin in Saul's hand. You see? So now it talks about this evil spirit coming upon Saul to trouble him, as was told him, as was prophesied, right? Now he's being troubled by this evil spirit. And then it says that David played with his hand, right? As far as David playing with a stringed instrument, right? He had skill playing music. And, I guess you could say it was like something he would do when he would tend to his sheep, right? Play music. So he brought that skill with him as he's in Saul's court at this point. But then it says that there was a javelin in Saul's hand, right? Which, you read about Saul, he was very skilled with the spear and with javelin, right? You always read about him carrying his spear with him, different places. It says, and Saul cast a javelin, for he said, I will smite David even to the wall with it. And David avoided out of his presence twice. So you got two scenarios here where Saul seeks into David's life, right? To not just to kill, but to murder in this case, but without a cause. But both times, David was paying attention, right? He kept his head on a swivel, right? And you see when it happened, he would dodge out of it. So this happened 2 times. So, imagine this. You get promoted, you working for the king himself, but now the king is trying to throw javelins at you, right? Just imagine what David's going through at this point, right? trying to make sense of it. As we're going to see how they respond to it, and how even Saul's family, how they respond to what he's doing. It says in verse 12, and Saul was afraid of David because Yahweh was with him and was departed from Saul. So he could see it, that the Most High was dealing with him and building him up, right? And he's probably reminded of the words of Saul, the words of Samuel to him, that the Most High was going to pick his neighbor over him, right? But it didn't just happen just like that. It's going to be a process. Like as we read through these chapters of Samuel, it's not going to be this thing where, okay, Saul just takes off the crown, gets out the seat, and goes, okay, David, here you go. Clearly, you're the next one in charge. You're the next king that's going to be. Here you go. It didn't happen that way. And as we read through these chapters in Samuel, we're going to see all the events that take place. There's going to be some time and a lot of back and forth between these two. It says, verse 13, therefore Saul removed him from him and made him his captain over 1,000. And he went out and came before the people. So he put a distance from him, and he gave him 1,000 to be a captain over. Remember, we read that in 1 Samuel 8. He can appoint captains over 50s, over hundreds, over thousands, right? So it says he went out and came in before the people as they went and did different battles. It says in verse 14, and David behaved himself wisely in all his ways, and the Lord was with him, right? So the Most High is still dealing with David, regardless of Saul trying to take his life and even putting him away from him, right, so that he wouldn't try it again. It says, but all Israel and Judah loved David because he went out and came in before them, right? So once again, that rapport getting stronger and stronger with the people as far as David going out to fight the battles and being in the forefront, fighting the battle, right? It's not like we see in today's time, you got the top brass, they kind of sit back in the war room or just sit back in the tent, right? And just tell the young men to go forward, right? So David's out there with his fellow men, right? Going out there and doing battle and gaining increases for the people. It says in verse 17 now, and notice also too in verse 16, it says Israel and Judah love David. So it's kind of talking from the future, because it was already known that there's going to be a split later on. But at this point, it was all the 12 tribes together under one banner, right? Saul being that first official king. So you had all the 12 tribes there, right? It says in verse 17, and Saul said unto David, behold, my elder daughter Merab, her will I give thee to wife. Only be thou valiant for me, and fight the Lord or Yahweh's battles. For Saul said, let not my hand be upon him, but let the hand of the Philistines be upon him. Right? So he's trying to manage his evil spirit that he has want to kill him. He says, you know what? Let him not fall into my hands, right? Let him go into the thick of the battle. May the Philistines knock him down. So it's like, you see this evil spirit on Saul and how it's affecting his thoughts, because if anything, David's victories are your victories, right? You've made him a chief commander in your army, right? A captain over 1,000. You see the evil spirit on him, where it's like he's wishing for him to have a mishap, right? But last time I checked, neither Saul or David like Philistines, right? They're both our sworn enemies. Reading on in verse 18, and David said unto Saul, who am I and what is my life, or my father's family in Israel, that I should be in son-in-law to the king? So David behaved himself wisely. He had the humble outlook, saying, well, who am I to be the son-in-law to the king, right? To be married to your daughter, right? I'm not worthy of that, right? So a quality you always see when it comes to leaders of our people, right? When we read throughout the scriptures, those fruits of the spirit, faith, in this case, we have humility, right? Or meekness. So we see David had that quality too. Makes you think back to Moses too, as far as Moses, him being meek as well. And it talks about how at his time in the earth, he was the meekest out of all the men on the earth at that time in that generation that were alive. So it shows you how far those fruits of the spirit go when it comes to the Most High calling you for his purpose. As we see, he's calling David this time. So David's humble, saying that, he's not worthy of being the son-in-law to the king. It says in verse 19, but it came to pass at the time when Merab, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David, that she was given unto Adriel the Maholathite to wife. So she was betrothed unto another man, right? So Saul had her married to someone else, right? Then it says in verse 20, and Michal, Saul's daughter, loved David, and they told Saul, and the thing pleased him, right? So he had another daughter, right? Even though his elder daughter, Merab, was married to another man, he had another daughter, Michal, who loved David, and they told him, and it says it pleased him. It says, and Saul said, I will give him her, that she may be a snare to him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. Wherefore Saul said to David, thou shalt this day be my son-in-law in the one of the twain, right? Or the two. So look at the why behind what he's doing. It's not right, right? He's hoping that he can use his daughter as leverage to what? Weaken him so that when he goes into the battle, he can fail. That's kind of crazy, right? But that just shows you when you go against the Most High, that curse can come on you, right? The evil eye towards your brother. We see Saul has that towards David. His evil spirit's going to try to have him do all types of mischief against him without a cause. It's going to get so bad that even, like I said, his other family members, Jonathan, namely, is even going to call him out on it. Like, Dad, what are you doing? Right? What's the cause? What has David done against you for you to be treating him this way? So he's pretending like it's one thing, like, oh, yes, I'm giving you my daughter to wife, but his intention behind why he's giving him his daughter Michal to wife is not good. It says in verse 22, and Saul commanded his servants, saying, commune with David secretly, and say, behold, the king hath delighted in thee, and all his servants loved thee. Now therefore be the king's son-in-law. And Saul's servant spake those words in the ears of David, and David said, seemeth it to you a light thing to be the king's son-in-law, seeing that I am a poor man and lightly esteemed, right? So once again, David having that humble approach, just considering himself, considering his family, the sons of Jesse, right? That, they had a little something in Judah. They had a little, plot of land. But he's once again saying to himself, who am I to be part of the king's family, right? Me just being a young shepherd boy. It says in verse 24, and the servants of Saul told him, saying, on this man spake David. So it's like he's, humbly esteemed to even be called into Saul's family this way, right? And Saul said, thus shall ye say to David, the king desireth not any dowry. Because remember, we go into the law, it says that what? Anytime a man marry a woman, he's supposed to give her father's house a dowry, right? The dowry of virgins. It says, but 100 foreskins of the Philistines to be avenged of the king's enemies. But Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. So he said, okay, you're a poor man in Israel. You can't afford my daughter. Okay, look, I get that, right? Because, to marry, you have to have a certain level of resources, right? To pay that dowry. Right? It's not anything cheap. So he said, you know what? That's cool. Don't worry about it. Your family isn't that wealthy in Israel. Cool. You can pay in a different way. Give me 100 foreskins of the Philistines, since he knew he was, valiant in battle, right? Because we read about Goliath, but there were other battles he fought that aren't listed here that showed his might as well. And he said, yeah, just pay me that way. But once again, what he's saying is one thing, but why he's saying it is another, right? The why he's saying it is malicious, right? His hope is that what? David falls at the hands of the Philistines. Like I said, it just shows that he's not in his right state of mind, because he's part of his army, right? They're fighting for the same country, right? They're fellow countrymen, fellow tribesmen, right? Yeah, Saul's maybe Benjamin. David might be Judah, but they're fighting for the same nation, right? They're part of that same governing body. So why does he want David to fall? Once again, this is all part of that evil spirit coming on him, getting into to now not judge rightly. But yeah, as far as the dowry in 18 and 25, it tells us this. I'm gonna go to Exodus real quick.
Oh.
So this is Exodus 22 and 16, and it reads. I'm also read verse 17 as well. Once again, Exodus 22 and verse 16. This is linking with 1 Samuel 18 and 25. Exodus 22 and 16. It says, if a man entice a maid that is not betrothed and lie with her, right? So entices means like to influence, right? To show forth that, he's a worthy man, right? A worthy man as far as spiritual riches and physical riches, enough to take a wife, right? And that responsibility. It says not betrothed because otherwise that'd be adultery, right? She's already betrothed to someone else. And lie with her, he shall surely endow her to be his wife, showing you that that's what consummates the marriage is what? Laying with a woman, right? Sexually. Even in today's law, they have a phrase referred to, they call it carnal knowledge, right? You hear that in like a modern legalese, which pretty much talking about the same thing you see here in the scriptures, right? When it talks about knowing someone, right? Or lying down with someone, sleeping with someone, right? It's the same idea.
Like in Jamaica, we said, common law wife.
Okay.
Same over here is common law wife.
Right. So in our context, it's just the law, right? It says in verse 17, and if her father utterly refused to give her unto him, so the father, based on this man, right, he can judge and go, I see what he's about. Nah, I don't want her to be married to him. So her father has a say so, right? It says he shall pay money according to the dowry of virgins. You see, so that's that dowry that we're reading about. So the key is, and we see sometimes the order isn't respected. Like we see what happened before we were a nation, we were just a family, and what they did to our sister Dinah, right? And you had Jacob's two of his sons, Simeon and Levi. Yeah, they got even, right? They came with a clever strategy to get even for that Shechem forcing our sister and then going to Jacob afterwards and going, oh, I want her for a wife when he already did the deed, right? So the idea is to go to the father first, God willing he's alive, to then ask for that woman's hand in marriage. And then as far as the specific amount, we can go to Deuteronomy 22. Yeah, you have a quote, or you were bringing something out?
No. I was looking at how much was 50 shekels of silver.
So this is Deuteronomy 22. I'm going to read 28 and 29, and we'll go back to Samuel. Deuteronomy 22, verses 28 and 29. So Deuteronomy 22 and verse 28, it reads, if a man, oh, you're still getting it?
Deuteronomy 20.
You good?
Deuteronomy 22. Deuteronomy 22
and 28. Okay. You found it?
Yeah.
Okay. If a man find a damsel that is a virgin, this context here referring to hasn't known a man, right? Which is not betrothed, so she's not promised to anyone else, and lay hold on her and lie with her, once again, sleeps with her as far as consummated marriage through intercourse, and they be found, so it's known, okay, these two are an item, these two are a couple. 29, then the man that lay with her shall give unto the damsel's father 50 shekels of silver. So this is that dowry that Exodus 22 was talking about. And she shall be his wife, because he hath humbled her, he will not put her away all his days. Right? So the intent was to be together continually, right? Now, that's another class going into the bill of divorcement. That's in the law too. But then Christ had to make sure we had clarity on that, right? To say, that's like a worst case scenario anytime you would employ that. But that's not just something that you just run to haphazardly. So Deuteronomy 22 and 28, verse 28 and 29, Exodus 22, 16 and 17 on the dowry. But to bring it back to the story with him and Saul, David and Saul, we see Saul, he humored him because he said he's a poor man, right? And lightly esteemed. He said, no problem. You can just pay it with foreskins of the Philistines, right? Because the heathen, they don't circumcise themselves, right? From their dead bodies, right? As a means to show, it's how many heads I took off, like you'll see other things that they might use as a token, right? You might say, yeah, I cut off the thumbs of, 50, mighty men of the people of this, right? And you bring that forth, and it shows forth, your valiantness in combat. It says back in 1 Samuel 18, read 26. There we go. And when his servants told David these words, it pleased David well to be the king's son-in-law. And the days were not expired. It says, wherefore David arose and went, he and his men, and slew of the Philistines 200 men. And David brought their foreskins, and they gave them in full tale, or full amount, to the king, and that he might be the king's son-in-law. So the king only requested 100. He said, you know what? Just in an act of good faith, I'll give you 200. Right? As the days weren't expired, right? Oh, I see the comment here in the comments. Yeah, I would say, nothing wrong with exercising those the righteous acts, right, and figuring out what the equivalent might be, if both families are in the truth, But a lot of times, you won't have both families in the truth, so it'll be kind of a strange thing, and it may the other party may not even receive it or accept it like that, right? But you can definitely try. Maybe they might receive it, but this is really more so when you have both families in Israel who know the law, know how it works, right? And it comes into what us dealing on with our inheritances and our different lands, because you have these two families marrying. If you have a daughter you're giving to another man, she's going to be a part of that household and his inheritance, whatever his inheritance is in Israel. So that's the wisdom behind why the Most High would do that, to where now that father who now doesn't have a daughter in his household anymore, who he's married off, he can use that money to, get another manservant or a maidservant to attend to his household now that she's not there anymore.
50 shekels, right?
Mm-hmm.
Equivalent to $258 today. Mm-hmm. And you don't work? And you don't live anywhere? Are you living with your mama? Are you going to just get my daughter? Where you going to put her? Nah. Change my mind,
Right. Exactly. Most of the laws are tied to inheritance somehow, some way, right? A lot of the why behind what we do, it's spiritual, of course, but then when it comes to physical, it's not just spiritual, but it's physical when it comes to inheritance. Like when it comes to marriages, like we're talking about now, right? And the costs associated with marriage, along with even other things too, as far as while we'll talk about not marrying someone that's a strange nation, right? Or a heathen, right? Because that deals with inheritance too. So you want the children to have both parents be of the Hebrew Israelites to where what they can know the importance of their lineage, where they come from, so they can grow the nation and increase their inheritance and make the most of it. But being in captivity, being far from home, and sometimes paying rent, or you might have a mortgage, and the bank can clear eminent domain and get it back from you. We're kind of detached from that whole sense of inheritance, right? And actually having a property or something that you can give to your children, right? That they can have for themselves. But you read the story about even going back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, you see inheritance was very much a part of what they did when it came to the work that they did, when they married one another, even when they died and wanted to, have a place to bury themselves. You read about Abraham even getting a plot of land from the Hittites or the children of Heth, and that became a grave site or a sepulcher for not only for him and his wife, but then for his son Isaac and Rebekah, and even for Jacob and Leah as well. Right, that cave, I think it was in Machpelah, I think it was the place was. But when you read Genesis 23, it goes into that. So that was all part of the inheritance at the beginning of what would be the inheritance that would, be the beginning of Israel. Okay, I see another comment here. All right, the water for that. The woman's family pays for the wedding as opposed to the male's family or male. Interesting. But yeah, a lot of the laws tie into inheritance one way or another. And us being in Israel, we're supposed to be the example. The other nations would, or we're supposed to follow suit. But we see with them, it's usually hit and miss. A few things they adopt from us, but then other things they change around. So now reading on in verse 28, and Saul, that's funny. Saul, yeah. So Saul the man, Saul, S-A-W. And Saul saw and knew that the Lord was with David. So he saw that the Most High was dealing with David continually. And that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him. And Saul was yet the more afraid of David, and Saul became David's enemy continually. So this evil spirit was just stirring more and more to where now what? He's at odds with David. David's not at odds with him, but he's at odds with David. We see a part of that curse, magnifying itself in him, right? Like I mentioned it earlier, Deuteronomy 28:54, right? How his eye shall be evil toward his brother. Whereas before, it says what? A man that is tender and delicate among you, right? That's how they started. That's why I called the service today, the Saul and David's falling out, right? We see the beginning of it in these two chapters, unfortunately. It says in verse 30, and the princes of the Philistines went forth, and it came to pass, after they went forth, that David behaved himself more wisely than all the servants of Saul, so that his name was much set by. You see that? So, the princes of the Philistines, they are making adjustments because he's kicking their behind. So David's having more and more victories, right? And he's behaving himself even more wisely. So he's sticking to his guns, making sure he follows the Most High, regardless of the situation. And it says that as he did this, it gave him good rapport with all of Saul's servants. And it says that his name was much set by, right? So he had an honorable name. And remember, when you read in the scriptures, I'm thinking about in Proverbs, right? Where it talks about the importance of a good name. So we see David having that and that increasing. Remember, we look up the word Sham, right? When we say Bahasham in the name, Shem is funny because that's even Samuel's name, right? Shemuel, which means the name of Yahweh. That's what his name means in Hebrew. That word Shem, it means name. It also can mean fame as well. So when you see in the scriptures, he got him a name, or you'll see it got him fame, you'll see the same word in the Hebrew, right? And regardless of whether it's his name or fame, that word can be used, that Hebrew word Shem can be used both ways. You know, he got him fame amongst the nations. He got him a name amongst the nations, right? They go hand in hand. But here's that verse in Proverbs about a good name. Proverbs chapter 22. And verse 1. Proverbs 22 and 1, it reads, "A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and loving favor rather than silver and gold." So David has something even more valuable because, like you said, he's a poor man and lightly esteemed, but at least he has righteousness, right? Which is setting him forward and allowing him to excel still, right? Amongst Saul and amongst Saul's servants and amongst the people proper, right? That's Proverbs 22 and 1. So you want to have that good name and that loving favor over riches and silver and gold. Because you have people that have the riches, silver and gold, but they have a bad name, right? Instead of loving favor, you know, they're on everybody's you know what list, right? We'll say feces list, right? To where you have money, but it's like nobody wants to even deal with you, right? Nobody wants to hang out with you, do business with you. They want to keep themselves separate from you. So, you know, the money can't fix that. But your character can. Also, so if we're talking about David, you know, being a mean man, mean as far as not angry, but mean as far as not having much. This is Proverbs 19 and 1. You can link that too. Proverbs chapter 19 and verse 1, where it says, once again, Proverbs 19 and 1, it reads, "Better is the poor that walketh in his integrity than he that is perverse in his lips and is a fool." Right? So we could definitely attach David to this particular proverb as well, right? He's that first example. He's that first precept, the poor that walketh in his integrity, right? So now let's get into 1 Samuel 19. So 1 Samuel chapter 19 and verse 1 now. Let's see what happens next. Oh, what happened? Did you hang up? Or did it hang up on its own? So this is 1 Samuel chapter 19 in verse 1. It reads, "And Saul spake to Jonathan his son and to all his servants that they should kill David." Right? So the evil spirit is not letting up. Now he's talking to even his son Jonathan, but then also his servants, saying, "I want David killed." Now it says in verse 2, so I was talking about before, he's going to get some pushback. "But Jonathan, Saul's son, delighted much in David," right? We already read that in the last chapter, right? How he loved him like he would love his own soul. How his soul was knit to him. Their souls were knit together like a fabric. All right, the water for down back in. It says, "And Jonathan told David, saying, Saul my father seeketh to kill thee. Now therefore I pray thee, take heed to thyself until the morning, and abide in a secret place, and hide thyself." Right? So Jonathan sees the situation, and him loving David, he gives him the heads up, right? Behind his father's back, saying, "Look, I don't know what's going on, but my dad wants to kill you. So hide yourself so that he can't find you. Because I'm not going to do it, but maybe some of Saul's servants might follow through. Just because, you know, it's the king's orders, right? They say, you know, the army, right? When the government, you know, sometimes pushing back even for the right reasons can get you removed or get you, cast out. It shouldn't, especially if you push back against the ruler before a righteous cause because you want the the kingdom to succeed. But Jonathan's thinking some may take Saul up on the offer and try to do it, try to kill you. Verse 3, and I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where thou art, and I will commune with my father of thee and what I see. That I will tell thee. Right? So he's going to pretty much be keeping tabs on, the different orders that his father puts out there, and then feed the information to David so that David can hide and maneuver accordingly, right? So Jonathan's got his back. It says in verse 4, and Jonathan spake good of David unto Saul his father. So he's giving David instructions on how to hide himself, but at the same time, he's going to try to press his father to go, yo, Pop, what's going on? Why David of all people, right? Don't do this thing. It says, let not the king sin against his servant, against David. So he even brought them, he's bringing the Most High into it, right? He loves his father, but he's not respecting his person. He sees his father doing the wrong thing, right? So he's trying to warn his father here. Let not the king sin against his servant, against David, because he hath not sinned against thee, and because his works have been to thee word very good. How can you reward a man evil for the good he's done you? And he's done for us as a nation, right? So Jonathan's giving his father wise counsel here, right? And it's a good thing he's standing up for righteousness because, it can be tough sometimes, from a son to a father, from a daughter to a mother, vice versa, right? Where you might respect their person, right? Because they're your parents. Even you see them saying or doing something that's clearly off, you may cover your mouth and go, I don't want to say anything to ruffle tail feathers or to, make them feel bad. But no, if you really care about your parents and you see them doing something that's wrong, just like for your kids, same thing. You want to tell them what they're saying, what they're doing, how it's going to cause them hurt. So once again, he's going to be in verse 5. He's making a case for David to his father, the king. Jonathan says in verse 5, for he did put his life in his hand and slew the Philistine. Going back to what happened with Goliath, right? Reminding him, didn't he just fight this great enemy of ours, right? And killed him? How come you want to kill him now? And the Lord, or Yahweh, wrought a great salvation for all Israel, right? So bringing the Most High into play again, showing that the Most High was with David to do this, right? For his good and for all our good. Thou sawest it, you were a witness, and didst rejoice, you were happy. Wherefore then wilt thou sin against innocent blood to slay David without a cause? Right? This is not a right thing you're doing, Dad. And to this man, for this reason, you don't have a reason. He's done nothing but good, right? To you and for us when it comes to fighting this Philistine. And for fighting everybody, pretty much for fighting for the nation. It says in verse 6, and Saul hearkened unto the voice of Jonathan, and Saul sware, as Yahweh liveth, he shall not be slain. Right? So he received the counsel from his son Jonathan. But as we're going to read on, we're going to see if that evil spirit's going to let up, right? Because it's almost like as we read on these chapters in Samuel, Saul's like a man apart, right? You can see his better sense there, but then the evil spirit leading on him and leading on his not so good sense. He's kind of like a man apart where he's got to fight with himself as it pertains to David, where you see clearly he's saying and doing the right things, but then the evil spirit will get on him and make the most of those emotions like jealousy, anger, right? To not want to slay him and, jealous for David and his coming up, and then even him fearing what he's going to lose now when it comes to the kingdom. So we're going to see this as we read on in these chapters of Samuel, Saul being split down the middle and being double-minded. The scriptures talk about being of a double mind. It says, Jonathan called David, and Jonathan showed him all those things. And Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he was in his presence as in times past. So at least for this time, he's able to be in front of Saul without Saul trying to, get a javelin and throw it against him while he's by the wall, right? Is that your javelin toss? Is that what you just did? It's funny. We always got Judah versus Benjamin when it comes to sprints, right? We got to see Benjamin, right? Whether it be Jamaica or Trinidad and Tobago, we got to see them compete in the javelin, right? Then it says in verse 8, and there was war again. David went out and fought with the Philistines and slew them with a great slaughter, and they fled from him. And it says in verse 9, and the evil spirit from the Lord, from Yahweh, was upon Saul. These are also scriptures we can talk about, like we talked about in the class last night. How Heavenly Father, he controls both good and evil, right? We kind of talked about it a little bit. We're talking more so about God and power and Lord, how they're just titles. They're not really a name per se. But one of the scriptures we pulled was going into how the angels on the right and left hand of God, the good and evil angels, they all present themselves before the Most High in the third heaven, right? In the other dimension where the Most High, Christ, and the angels dwell. Once again, like I said, with both good and evil angels, what the scriptures talk about, good angels and as well as evil angels, right? So it doesn't say who this evil spirit is, but clearly it was agreed upon in that third heaven that this evil spirit would then go down and trouble Saul, right? And play on his not so good thoughts. As he sat in his house with his javelin in his hand, and David played with his hand. So, like I said, you always read about Saul having this javelin or this spear, right? Even before he had the evil spirit on him, right? You know, spear was like his let's say his weapon of choice, but you always kind of read about him having a spear, right? It says he had this in his hand. It says in verse 10, and Saul sought to smite David even to the wall with the javelin. So he's at it again. We just read in verse 7, or rather verse 6, he received Jonathan's counsel, right? To say, all right, son, you're right. He's a good man. He's done nothing but good for Israel. I swear I'm not going to kill him. But that evil spirit is still on him to where even though he made that agreement with Jonathan before the Most High, he's still trying to what? Come after David without a cause, right? And I mentioned the whole double-mindedness. Let's get those verses real quick. Two come to mind. One's in the Apocrypha, and the other one's in the New Testament. Let me get the one in the Apocrypha real quick. So this is Ecclesiasticus to link with verse 10. Verse 10 and 6, because 6 where he says one thing and then 10 he pretty much does a flip. Ecclesiasticus chapter 2. In verse 12. Ecclesiasticus chapter 2 and verse 12, it reads, woe be to fearful hearts and faint hands, and the sinner that goeth 2 ways. Right? That 2 ways talking about what? Being double-minded. Where you'll see the word in English that we use more so today, and they'll use the word duplicitous. Right? Which I looked up the word whist last night. If I look up the word duplicitous, it says this. It's a little word of the day, huh? Duplicitous. Marked or characterized by duplicity. It says deceitfulness in speech or conduct, as by speaking or acting in 2 different ways to different people concerning the same matter. And it says double dealing, an act or instance of such deceitfulness. Then they have the legal definition, which kind of goes in a different direction. But I guess if you guys want to see it, I'll share it real quick. I'll share that tab. Hold on a second. Okay, there we go. More so emphasis on the first definition here, as well as the number 4. A state of quality having 2 elements or parts, being twofold or double. You'll see in scriptures referring to going 2 ways or being double-minded. Let me get the other verse. So that was Ecclesiasticus 2:12. This is James, the New Testament, chapter 1. And you want to just be mindful, right? When we study Saul, his rise and his fall, should be that cautionary tale, right? To consider it and go, wow, I could fall into a similar circumstance, or you know what? I might be on the verge of going into a similar circumstance as him, right? To where I know the truth, but now I'm willfully going against it. Now I got evil spirits knocking at my door, right? Weighing me down to where if I'm not in my better mind to make the right decision, I'll let those unclean spirits come into my house and then overturn it. So, when we look at, figures like Saul, just the thing is just to study, to consider it, and just to beware, right? This is James chapter 1 and verse 6. It says, I'll start from 5 and I'll read down to 8 to get the whole story. So James chapter 1 and verse 5, it reads, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. Right? So the Most High will give us wisdom as we seek it. Sometimes he may not give it to us right away, but he's seeing what we're going to be diligent and consistent in seeking him, and then add to our wisdom. It says in verse 6, but let him ask in faith, nothing wavering. For he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. Right? So you want to be confident when you go to the Most High that what? He can and will do it for you. Even if he doesn't, you just say, you know what? I asked for a good thing. It may not be the time for me to get it, but I still trust the Lord. Right? It's hard to have that outlook sometimes. Right? When you ask for something, you don't get it. It can be disheartening. It can be discouraging. But as long as you know what you're asking for is a righteous thing, you don't have to feel bad if you don't get it right away or you don't see it at all. It says, verse 7, for let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord, the man that wavers. Then it says in verse 8, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. So we're going to see this instability with King Saul going forward, as he's like a man apart, fighting with himself. And then also in James, you can jump to chapter 4 and verse 8 as well, where it says, still in James, this is chapter 4 and verse 8. It says, draw nigh to God or close to God, and he will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, right? So stop the evil that you're saying that you're doing. Ye sinners, and purify your hearts or your minds. It says, ye double-minded. See that? So we're encouraged to not be double-minded. Okay, so let's go back to Samuel. 1 Samuel chapter 19. I'm going to read verse 10 again. 1 Samuel 19 and 10, it says, and Saul sought to smite David even to the wall with the javelin, but he slipped away out of Saul's presence, and he smote the javelin into the wall, and David fled and escaped that night. So, spirit being on David, he just has that awareness to where even though he might be playing with his harp or his instrument, stringed instrument, he'll see Saul come up and he'll say, oh, get ready as soon as he goes for the throw. So this is multiple occasions where Saul's doing this. So this is a wild thing, man, because like I said, try to put yourself in David's shoes, right? Where You got the promotion, right? Got the top position, right? You're working for the king himself, right? In today's time, you might say, okay, I got the promotion. Now I work in the company, working with the CEO, right? And every time you are sitting down with the CEO, he or she is trying to set you up, trying to sabotage you, right? Saying bad things about you in the meeting. Got an email going out there about you, it's just like, what the heck? I got a promotion, right, for doing the right thing. But now they're trying to slander me. What's going on? Right? I'm trying to do good, do right for the company, for the organization. And they're trying to ruin me, trying to finish me, trying to cancel me, right? So
Smear campaign.
Say what?
Smear campaign.
Yeah, exactly. That's not even physical death, but that's like social death.
Yeah.
But now with David, socially he's already there. He's got the respect, the love, the adoration of the people, even the king's son himself, right, Jonathan? But now, Saul wants to do a smear campaign, all right. He wants to smear his blood. Hence him trying to hit him with the javelins. Sheesh. Let's read on in verse 11. It says, and Saul, keep doing that. Why you keep doing that? And Saul, rather, in verse 11, it says, Saul also sent messengers unto David's house. When you turn off your screen, you got to be careful. Because what happens when you turn off your screen, it hangs it up sometimes. I think that's what's happening. So it says in verse 11, Saul also sent messengers unto David's house to watch him and to slay him in the morning. Just let it time out on its own. You already got it on the charger. Or go to your home screen and then turn the screen off. That way it's not hanging up. It says, Saul also sent messengers into David's house to watch him and to slay him in the morning. And Michal, David's wife, told him, which is his one of his daughters, saying, If thou save not thy life tonight, tomorrow thou shalt be slain. Right? So not only Jonathan, but Michal, which is another one of Saul's daughters, she's looking out for David too, right? Because she loves him like how Jonathan loves him, right? Love him as far as David as a person, but of course they love him differently given she's married to him. But she's getting the heads up also, right? She knows that Saul, pretty much put hits out on his life to where they're gonna lay in wait for him to leave in the morning from where she's at. That's why she's telling him, leave before the morning so that they don't kill you. It says in verse 12, so Michal let David down through a window, and he went and fled and escaped. And Michal took an image and laid it on the bed. I think in the side caption I have a teraphim, which is like something like a stone, like a statue or something like that. Something that'll pretty much make a lump in the pillow or on the bed. And Michal took an image and laid it on the bed and put a pillow of goat's hair for his bolster and covered it with a cloth. And when Saul sent messengers to take David, she said, he's sick. And Saul sent the messengers again to see David, saying, bring him up to me in the bed that I may slay him, right? So he got away, but she's just like, he's sick. So he's like, she's taking up for him, right? He's not doing so well because she doesn't want her dad to kill him either. And when the messengers were come in, behold, there was an image in the bed with a pillow of goat's hair for his bolster. So they probably went in there and, pulled the sheet back. Or God forbid they hack first, they see him laying there and they kind of tiptoe. And they all, surround him. Wait a minute. He's not here. It's just a teraphim, right? Or an image. And a pillow filled with goat's hair. It's like you'll see that sometimes in like books or like movies, right? Where you see like they got somebody someplace and they got like somebody, looks like somebody's sitting there, The guy sneaks up on him, and then they get to him, turn the lights, and you just see it's just like a mannequin or something, you know? They sit there like, and they go, curses! We must find him. He escaped us again. You know, he eluded us. So that's kind of what's going on here, right? It says, and Saul said unto Michal, why hast thou deceived me so, and sent away mine enemy, that he is escaped? So he's giving her the same treatment he gave Jonathan, right? They're both trying to tell him, Dad, what are you doing? He's a righteous man. You know, he's fighting great victories, right? Great battles for us, right? When he wins, we win. Why you have us try to set him up? He's a righteous man. And Michal answered Saul, he said unto me, let me go. Why should I kill thee? Right? So she pretty much told him, you know, he couldn't be withheld, right? He had to get out of Dodge. But the real reason we know is she gave him the heads up so he can get away. Because, you know, she was obviously under her father's care, him being the king, just like Jonathan. But, you know, they still had the courage enough to protect David, seeing that it was a wrong thing. Even though their father put the order out. Because, like I said, it's easy for the children of the parents, especially the children of a king or a queen, to respect his or her person, right? Even though that they're making a commandment that's clearly wrong, they're just like, follow them to the end because that's my dad, that's my mom, and they have power. So listen to them, even though it's like they may think to themselves, I wouldn't go about things this way, or that's clearly wrong, clearly evil. But they go along with it because that's my dad, you know? But they didn't do that. So that's really telling. And it just shows how the Most High, when you follow him, no matter how bad things can get, the Most High can raise up enemies amongst your people, enemies amongst the other nations. He'll still find a way because you'll have maybe those who try to seek evil, come after you for evil. The Most High will change the hearts of certain people in your travels to help you out, to assist you, be them of your brothers and sisters, or be it of even the other nations. You can, I call it remote control them, right? Where you kind of take over their wiring, and all of a sudden they're just helping you out for something. It's just like, I really don't know this person like that. Why are they helping me? And they'll even do it too for people that are close to you. In the case of David, you know, he's married to Michal, and he's very close friends with Jonathan, right? So he's got two of King Saul's children got his back looking out for him. It says in verse 18, so David fled and escaped and came to Samuel to Ramah, right? So Samuel's still around, but he's kind of, off doing his thing because remember, he was the last judge. Now it's the time of kings. And we know Samuel already gave Saul his judgment, going back to chapter 15. When he didn't listen, he didn't wholly follow the Lord his God. So David obviously is in a tough spot. So he said, let me go to Samuel. Maybe he can give me some advice or something, tell me something that can help. And told him all that Saul had done to him. And he and Samuel went and dwelt in Naoth. So they went together and traveled to another place called Naoth. And it was told Saul, saying, behold, David is at Naoth in Ramah. So Saul's got his spies, right? His communication network, right? Like any ruler, any proper ruler, going to have like their eyes and ears in different places, right? They want to find out someone's whereabouts. They can report back and be like, hey, you're looking for so-and-so, right? Yeah, we saw him going here. We saw him going there, right? So we did that. You'll see any nation will do that, right? Both past and present. And they'll even, whoever's in power, they'll even take the people that they have power over and even use them as spies, right? Like you see even in today's time, right? We're in captivity here in the Americas, right? But then law enforcement, right? They might be seeking after somebody. And when law enforcement works, in a certain precinct or work a certain area, right? They'll get close with certain of our people in our neighborhoods. And when they want to find someone, right, there'll usually be a certain person they can go to, Wise Man Willie, right? Or Sister Sarah, or whoever, right? That is known in the community. And you kind of see that where they're like, hey, officer, how you doing? Say, hey, how you doing? Yeah, just, here's a little something, for your service. we were looking for so and so, right? And then you got our people, okay, thanks. Yeah, I saw him, pass through here about 3 days ago. Start giving information to the cops. Yeah, you guys can see Madashah here. He's like, snitch.
But sometimes in our community, we see it as something wrong, but it's not. Sometimes it is doing the right thing.
Mhm.
Just if it was a family member of yours that was murdered, or a close friend or somebody, or neighbor or something, and you witnessed to see what happened. You saw somebody in the neighborhood that did it. You know who did it. The cops come question you, just gonna lie for that person.
Right.
Then you're gonna be accessory to murder. You know what happened. You don't say anything, and that person just walk around freely. But if it was your family member, you purchased. Yeah, it was him. You pointed out. You didn't even think about it. So, it's like this thing in the hood about you snitching. Like they said, snitches get stitches.
Wind up in ditches.
Right, exactly. Because it's wickedness.
Right. That's true.
The Most High said, I'm a man of justice.
Come.
So
That's true.
if we see something that somebody's doing horrible, it's a sin, committing a sin, and that's why we have the authority to the guy. Most High used authority to correct some of us. So
Come.
we have to say something. That snitching stuff, man. Yeah, you see something. I'm gonna say something. They come to me, ask me a question. I saw what happened. I'm gonna tell the truth.
Yeah, it's the they even make songs about it, right? But it's like the unwritten rules, the code of the street. Doing the code of the street is just a response to us being in wickedness, right? As a means of preservation, defending ourselves against an oppressive government, with the cops being that armed enforcement. I know Khan Samak, I think, was going into this. I think not this Friday, but I think the class before, going into Romans 13, right, where it says, be the powers that be. It says how uh, God is not a terror to good works. The powers that be are not a terror to good works, but to evil. So if we dealt with this code first and foremost, right, there would be no need to lean on the code of the streets as a line of defense. Because the only reason why we have a code of the streets is because of our wickedness, and because the Most High pretty much has the wicked, which is like his sword, out there to cut us down, right? To where we'll see things happen in the news where you'll say, "Oh my God, he was so young, he was innocent, he wasn't even involved, he got caught in the crossfire, he got killed, or the cops got him, this, that, and the third." But when we talk about being innocent, that might just be nice, or maybe he didn't get jumped into the gang, but he probably isn't dealing with the law more than likely because his parents aren't dealing with the law. So it's like, how righteous is this person? Not only in this life, but then even what they were doing before this life, because we have this weird perception where we see certain people they'll die in gang violence. And we'll just say, man, how could this happen to so-and-so? He or she was one of the good ones. But say, according to what standard, So Most High had that happen for a reason, as a means of a score to show, unless you're following my goodness and following my code, right? The code of the streets paved with gold, right? That's the code of the streets we want to be following, not the code of the streets of Babylon. We're going to keep suffering these things.
The thing about the code of the street is that they take that and lumps in it with everybody. Let's say if somebody's in a gang, they say you're in a gang, or you're out there, you're selling drugs, you're amongst your crew, or one of your crew, or you get arrested, something like that, and they say, "Oh, did you give up your crew?" That's that code of that particular environment that you in. It's not everybody, right? So if you know what you're getting into, you get into that gang, they say, "Yo, one of us get arrested. You can't snitch on everybody else." That's that code.
Right.
But that doesn't lump sum with everybody else in the community, because everybody's community is not part of your cliques, not part of the gang, not part of that street. Right? I'm sure a lot of us in here is not in the street. We walk the street, but we're not in the street.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the part, like in social media or in our community, they lumps it all together as if we're all part of this street because we live in the community. Nah, man, we're not part of that.
Right. And you got folks that'll keep a lid on it because they know who is. They're not, but it's like, I don't want to be involved. So that they'll do the, out of fear,
Right, out of fear. And,
And you got that with the heathen too, because they always say it's just like they act like we invented gang violence. But you got this with Moab, with the triads, with the Italians and the mafia, the Russian mob, same thing. It's like the same dynamic. It's just that won't get the attention.
More organized.
Right.
Organized crime.
But it's all wicked in the end, right?
Like in the movie Harlem Nights, he's taking everybody downtown.
Mm-hmm.
So who's gonna pay everybody?
Right. Yeah, man. But yeah, when we follow Most High's laws, first and foremost, and we've had this experience, right? Even when we're out there teaching, people, come up on us and they're like, "Oh, these guys are preaching hate." They call the cops on us, and the cops just like, "Yo, let these guys do what they're doing. They're not hurting anybody. You get lost." And they're just like, and it was this famous video. I think it was I think it might have been GMS Brothers out in the Midwest somewhere. I think they're like in Colorado or something. And the main teacher, he was kind of making some jokes and stuff. And he had this Edomite come up. And then she like, they're telling her like, "Yo, back up. You know what I mean?" And they're just teaching and this, that, and the third, talking about, they're going to go into captivity, this, that, and the third. And then she like lunges towards them. And the one brother just like knocks her on the ground, right? He's like, "Get back." And then she just, she does typical Edomite woman. Oh my God, he assaulted me, And then the cops showed up. They kept teaching. And the cops, you see them arresting her. And they, they're like doing rise Israel. That's right. Yeah. And you see that she's just totally like shell shocked because in her mind, I call the cops. They're supposed to get these Negroes, so-called Negroes. But it didn't happen that way.
Karen was upset.
Yeah, as they say, Karen. Now, this is before Karen was a thing. Now, this video goes back, I think, like about 10 years or so. Right. I'm saying as far as Karen being like, like a household name like it is now. But yeah, you've always had that idea. The idea of a Karen has been around since, since you've had Esau, And Esau having people in captivity. But yeah, she was just totally shocked because she just knew when she called the cops, they're gonna shut the brothers down. But nope. Now what's crazy is these brothers need to be careful, certain camps, because we got to stay in that righteous guideline. Only use force when necessary, when to defend yourself. Right? The situation could have went worse if they had been the aggressor. Right? They were just using words. She's the one that put hands on them, and they defended themselves. Right? So they were in the clear. But if you're the one to start the fight, you got witnesses, this, that, and the third. Even if it's not witnesses, the Most High sees your spirit, what you're doing, and why you did it. Now the Most High can have the nations or the cops come and get you, whether it be the nations or even our people as police. There's another video I remember. I forget who the brothers were, but it was like a park area, and you see these brothers teaching in the park. They had these sidewalk going different ways. You see two cops walk right past the camp, and they don't bother them at all, right? They go like down this walkway, going all the way to the end of the park where they leave and go across the street. Brothers are teaching, standing there teaching. And all of a sudden, when the cops get to the end of the walkway, brothers teaching, he just stops teaching whatever he was teaching, looks at the cops and goes, "F the police." And you see the cops, they were like I said, they almost left the park. The cops stop, look at each other, do a whole 180, and then come back to the camp and like, "All right, guys, come on, it's just put them in cuffs," right? You got the one brother filming, and you got at the end, you see the words come across the screen. "Look at what they do to the prophets." It's just like, come on, Akio. Y'all, that was y'all, because they left y'all alone. They wouldn't mess with you. They would talk about F the police. Like you were asking for that one. That's where it's just like you got to be wise. But I'm saying in the video they did a whole 180 and came back and then
I know, but you get arrested for saying F the police.
Yeah, you're antagonizing.
Apparently, that's what they did. But the point being, whether there's a law in it or not, as far as bad mouthing police, it's just not a wise thing to do.
Yeah, that's not. That's stupid. Yeah. I would say.
Right, and it's not wise according to the scriptures because, like Romans 13 says, they work for the Most High ultimately. The Most High only has them on us because we're disobeying Him. That's why we have so much trouble with them. When we deal with the laws, the Most High can remote control them and have them clear a path for us. And you'll see our people will be amazed when they see it. The heathen and our people will be amazed, like, wow, the cop showed up. They didn't lay a finger on them Israelites. Wow. Then, their suspicion will be like, well, those guys are still not preaching the truth. Those guys are still preaching hate. But they'll see it and just be like, wow, cops didn't even lay a hand on them.
Let's go with Psalm 73. I said that goes with Psalm 73.
Oh, about being envious of the wicked.
Because even the cops tell us it's like clear the sidewalk. If you guys clear the sidewalk, or maybe don't have the speakers in the bullhorn so loud or whatever, or put it away, and you'll do it.
But yeah, you definitely want to look up ordinances because they usually don't do that, in at least in the city of Philadelphia. But we go to 69th Street, which is like in Upper Darby, they got different rules up there. Whereas in the city, it's cool. The only thing is they'll just say is, don't block like a business or establishment. Like, don't set up right in front of the door where you got to go into the store. You can set up on the side of a business, but don't be set up right in front of where the doors are or where the customers coming. You know what I mean? Like 11th and Market, we're on the side of the CVS. We're not setting up in front of the CVS, right? I mean, if anything, we could set up maybe across from the entrance, like where the street corner is, against where the the mailbox is, where the trash can is, or something like on that side. But don't be set up right in front where the people going to the store. But that's kind of messed up too because we know all the stores should be closed anyway when we're out there in the Sabbath. But that's another story. But yeah, make sure we always weigh things in the balance and just apply wisdom.
Different rules in different areas. When you go to the Caribbean, right, on Saturday, streets are packed. Vendors, things are popping. Sunday morning, during the day, everything shuts down. I'm like, wow, this is where it should be Saturday.
Come.
Sunday. I mean, everything is closed. I mean, you barely see cars in the street. Business, everybody's at home. You see them in the street, you go to church. It's like, wow. This is why you should be like in righteousness, but they do it in the wrong way, wickedness.
Come.
Even if the cops come and tell us, like, all right, guys, you won't leave. You don't argue. You don't leave. Go somewhere else.
Right. That's Matthew 5:25. Agree with thine enemy when he's in the way. When you come in the way with him, lest he deliver you to the judge. I forgot his word exactly, but Matthew 5:25 talks about that.
Yeah, you don't want to be like cause it stir,
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, go somewhere else.
So 1 Samuel 19, it says in verse 20, and Saul sent messengers to take David. And when they saw the company of the prophets prophesying, and Samuel standing as appointed over them, the Spirit of God was upon the messengers of Saul, and they also prophesied. So check out, the Most High had this miracle happen where he averted their spirit trying to come against David, righteous man, and then had them start prophesying. Then it says, and when it was told Saul, he sent other messengers, and they prophesied likewise. So he keeps trying to send his servants to pretty much be like a goon squad. Go and get David. Each time they go over there, they go in there and they start prophesying. Right? The Spirit comes on them. It says, and then Saul sent messengers again a third time, and they prophesied also. So 3 times. Then it says in 22, then went he also to Ramah and came to a great well that is in Secu. And he asked and said, where are Samuel and David? And one said, behold, they be at Naoth and Ramah. So he told them, yeah, they're in a city Naoth. They travel to this other place, Naoth, like we read above in verse 18. So they quote unquote snitched, right? But it doesn't matter because David's following the Most High. He's gonna have that protection against Saul, who what? Is coming at him but for evil reasons, without a righteous cause. It says, and he stripped off his clothes also and prophesied before Samuel in like manner, and laid down naked all that day and all that night. Wherefore they say, is Saul also among the prophets? So even he, for this moment, was overcome by the Holy Ghost, right? We took off his mantle and stuff, and then it's prophesying. Remember when we say naked, naked is like stark, but then you also have naked as far as not having your overgarment. You just have like your undergarments, and that's it. Because we have situations like that with Isaiah. He was naked too. And we had a class on that saying, "Oh, is Isaiah, totally exposed, totally out in the buff?" But we could probably go into that during the class during the week. We talk about being naked and to what degree.
Oh, so he wasn't butt naked.
Right. But the key is that what? The Most High will deliver those that are righteous, right? Even for those that are coming against you of your own people or of the other nations, right? The Most High will do right by you. I know we talk about it a lot, but you can just write down Jeremiah 15:11 that talks about that. So Jeremiah chapter 15 in verse 11. The focus is talking about the nations, but it's going to apply to your brother too, because you can't have enemies of your own people, right? I think somebody added that question for me not too long ago. We're reading, I think, through Matthew, where it says, bless them that curse you, right? It is said of old time to hate thine enemy and love thy neighbor, right? This is what Jeremiah 15:11 says, right? This is why. I'm going to read this in Jeremiah 15, and I'll read what Christ talked about. This is Jeremiah chapter 15 and verse 11. It says, the Lord, or Yahweh, said, verily it shall be well with thy remnant. Meaning you always have a certain number of us, no matter what captivity, that seek after the Most High, right? It won't be the majority, but it'll always be like a handful of us that seek the Most High. It's like right now in modern day Babylon, right, called America. You got the remnant of us now, right? Different branches of Christ that are out there. Some know about each other, some don't, right? Some famous, some obscure, but we're out there doing the work, right? You got camps never seen, even our camps, Central South America, waking up, teaching, right? Edifying, even within the United States and even up in Canada, right? Coming into this truth, doing the work, going to the chief place of concourse, like it says in Proverbs chapter 1, and teaching. It says, it shall be well with thy remnant. Verily, I will cause the enemy. Once again, we know enemy is the nations, but it can be your brother when what? They go off. Just like we're reading in last week in Maccabees, right? Where you had our enemy, the Greeks, but you had brothers, priests of all that, sons of Aaron, that became our enemy too, because they wanted to sabotage Judas and Simon and Jonathan. Right? They want to run to the Greeks and go, oh, look what they're doing. Alchemists and Jason, those were brothers, but they became enemies because why? They wanted to sell us out to the Greeks. But it says, I will cause the enemy to entreat thee well in the time of evil and in the time of affliction. So let's make sure we're mindful that when we're in the truth, the Most High can do that. And sometimes it can catch you by surprise. What happens is, for people to come in the truth and we're not rooted just yet in who the Most High made us to be and how he made the nations, right? We can lose sight and we can get into the Bible, learn the truth about who we are, why we're in a lower state, why we're the head, why we're the tail and the nations are the head. But then the minute the Most High applies Jeremiah 15:11 to you, say in the workplace, right? Or you might be a business owner. You might be having issues with the people that are on your block where you might have your business, or you might have a portable business, but then you try to get certain things done with other vendors, other merchants. You get issues with them. And then most I put the spirit on that fellow business person or vendor or that coworker, right? Or that manager to be nice to you. And then you're ready to go right back into your old man, your old woman, loving the other nations, right? Oh, these so-called white folks aren't so bad. Look, I set up my business and they helped me out with the, making sure I have my paperwork straight with the city. How you gonna say they're going into captivity? They're not that bad, right? Or so-and-so told me about how to apply to get a promotion. Or my boss gave me a raise after 3 months. You say he's going into captivity. Come on, man. That can't be right. Right? God doesn't hate God doesn't just hate, them as a people, right? He loves some of them. How can he hate an entire nation of people? Like we read last night, right? The nations are like a drop. But he can make them do right by it. We're reading it right here. That's the Most High, though. Like I said, if our old man or old woman still has that root in us, that thorn, instead of us having a proper root, yeah, we can go right back into that so-called Christian mind state, and love the nations more than you love yourself. And that's what happens. You forget this, and you go, you know what? The Gentiles can be saved. The nations can be saved because of what some nice things the heathen did for you. You not realizing it was the Most High that did that nice thing for you. He just used them as a vessel.
Like, they say the good Samaritan.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible didn't say that. It was a Samaritan. But he did good because our people passed them.
Right.
Passed our people.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody out from another nation helped us.
Mm-hmm.
Help the man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think a lot of Christianity, when they use that, like just those example you just give about, your boss or your
Somebody you do business with.
That sort of thing. They thinking about, I think it's what's the name, Muhammad the Harlot?
Oh, Rahab, right.
Rahab the Harlot.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they're thinking about when they say that, because she was spared and her family was spared when we came through, right? And was it Jericho?
Right.
So that's what they're thinking about, and they lump sum every other nation, Edomites that was nice to them. They lump them in that particular category, saying this is what's going to happen to them. So they say those that were nice to them in certain situations.
Come, that's what happens. Mm-hmm. Let me read this too before we close out, because we finished up kind of early today. But this is Matthew chapter 5. I'm going to read 43 down to 48. I'm going to stop at 48. I thought about this verse. We're dealing with we think he was the northern tribe brother. Remember the one that had the clean shave and yeah. I wanted to get this, but he ran away too quick due to his being offended. But especially the last part. But then I think the last part was also somebody else. No, the last part, I'm sorry, was not him. The last verse I'm going to read here was for, remember the taller brother that was with those girls? I'm not sure if that was like his sisters or cousins, whoever. Yeah. That last part would have been for him, because what did he literally say? I might be quoting him wrong. You guys might remember. When we're talking about, being perfect, he was like,
I don't want to be perfect.
Yeah, he said, I want to be perfect. Then he said something after that, too.
Precise. He won't be precise.
Right. So it's just like, what does that mean? It was almost like he didn't want to try. But he had ear at first, but then it was like something happened where he just said, oh, man, let me get going, because like he's really about to get the answers that he seeks. That's what I love to do. I love, someone pops up at the camp and they see the signs, they're kind of interested. I want to talk about what you don't know. I want to preach to the wise. Because, our people and the heathen too, they kind of want to play this whole gotcha game, right? Where they're going to keep this whole like shroud of mystery around them, right? Where you don't know what they're into. They'll be like, oh, no, it's okay, brother. I just want to listen. Just want to listen to hear what you have to say. They listen to you say some stuff and it's like, all right, I'll talk to you later. It's just like, I want to know what you're into. What do you believe, right? We'll shift this discussion around what you think is true. That way, at least we can give you something that's useful. Because we might just talk about some stuff they already know about. Jesus died for his people or whatever. They might just think, they may walk away wise in their own conceit, like it says in Proverbs, right? The scriptures tell us to answer a fool according to his father, lest he be wise in his own conceit. So we want to avoid that. But that's what they'll do. They'll just listen to you speak, but then they won't, show what they know. But yeah, it's imperative for us to ask those questions. Hold on. I'm not just going to be here preaching. I want to know what you believe. Do you believe in God? Do you believe in Christ? Do you believe in the Bible, right? I want to find out where you're at. Because I want to talk about the things that are needful for you. That's be my brother's keeper. Whether you'll hear, whether you'll forbear. So at least I've done my job at that point, like Ezekiel says, right? Chapter 3. At least I've delivered my soul. But at least your blood won't be required at my hand, because I told you what you needed to hear, not what you wanted to hear. But this is Matthew chapter 5, verse 43, about neighbors and enemies. It says, ye have heard that it have been said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. Verse 44. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them that despitefully use you and persecute you. Now, the context here is different from Jeremiah 15:11. This is focused mainly on the enemy of our people, right? The context here. But notwithstanding, even we're talking about the heathen, right? Showing love to them is still what? The commandments. Same as we always say what? When we have the 4 questions to the ignorant, and we have the 3 questions from the aware, right? When we go offensive, right, we ask the 4 questions to the ignorant, meaning those that don't know. We ask them, do you believe in God? You believe in Christ? You believe in the Bible? And if they say yes to all those, how do you prove that? If they say no to any of those, you find out why and listen for what their temptation is, right? But then when we defend the faith, when we contend for the faith, we ask the 3 questions from the aware, which is, because people will come to the camp. Okay, what's this all about? And you hit them with those 3 main things. Who are we as a people? Why are we in a lower state? And what do we do to get out of it? Right? That's the bare minimum. You want to always leave somebody with that, so they know exactly what it is that you're about. But you can apply that to the heathen too, right? But you just reverse it. Who are you, stranger? What's your actual nationality? Because your parents lied to you. Jeremiah 16:19. 2, why are you in a higher state? Why are you in rulership? And 3, what are you doing right now is going to cause you to come out of it and to be under us. So you pretty much apply those same questions to them, but just reverse it. As opposed to your own people, why are they in a lower state? What do you do to get out of it? To the other nations, you ask them, do they know who they are? Why they're in their rulership? Why they're in their time of rulership? And what they're doing right now is going to lead them to fall out of it. That's loving your neighbor. That's loving your enemy of the heathen. Because their people aren't telling them that. Their people are telling them whatever they want to tell them. But they're not telling them the truth like the Bible has. Telling them what their actual name is. Showing what their actual prophecy is for them. Right? Of course, in general, they're going to be our servants and handmaids. Right? It tells you in Isaiah 14:1-2. But then there's even prophecies that specifically deal with, certain nations. Like you'll see in Isaiah and Jeremiah, Ezekiel, they'll talk about the burden of Damascus, the burden of Moab, the burden of Elam, right? The burden of Dedan, the burden of this people, that people, right? See, the focus is us. Everybody's in there. And no other book can boast of what? The origin as well as the rise and fall of nations. Only the Bible can do that. Right? So you don't see the Quran or the Hadith doing that. You don't see the Egyptian Book of the Dead or the 42 Principles of Ma'at. You don't see anything in Egyptology doing that. But the Bible does it. And you want to say, that's the white man's book. We got the original Hebrew also. We don't read that because you don't understand it. We read it. We study it. But we're going to teach you in English because that's the language you understand. We go to the original Hebrew to confirm what the King James is talking about. Because, we hear that all the time. Oh, that's the white man's book. Oh, that book is only a couple hundred years old. See, what I deal with goes back to ancient times, as if this book doesn't go back to ancient times too. It's just a translation in English. These are the foolish comebacks we hear time and time again. But anyway, let me read on. I'll read 44 again. It says, "But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, pray for them that despitefully use you and persecute you." Right? So you want to show your brothers and sisters a better way. You still are mindful. You still don't want to get, slighted by them, right? But at the same time, you show them a better way by trying to deal with them, trying to show them the truth, show them that, there's no need for you to be hostile because we're under a curse. Use pronouns like we, us, not you and them. You so-called black man, you Negro, you this, you that, you people, right? That creates a separation. You don't read the prophets doing that. Prophets were always like Jeremiah, Ezekiel. They were always, we have sinned. We have fallen down. We are under a curse. And they were righteous, but they talked about the group as a whole when you read the prophecies. So we have to be in that mode too, just like the prophets that came before us. Verse 45, that ye may be children of your Father which is in heaven. For he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and send the rain on the just and on the unjust. Right? So the sunshine, the rain falls on everybody, right? Whether you follow the Most High or you don't. Check this out. Verse 46, for if ye love them which love you, what reward have ye? Do not even the publicans or the tax collectors the same? Right? You'll see references to publicans in the Gospels because they were the tax collectors for the Romans. They had a bad stigma, right? They were looked at as like sellouts, by the Jews at that time, right? Or you work like today we'll say, you working for the man, huh? They out here working for the man, a little PPA, meter man, or Mr. Policeman, or this or that, the other, right? You're coming to empty my pockets, huh? I like what your brother did because he created a business out of it, but then reversed it where he's a publican, right? But he's actually doing it to help his people, show them, look, here's how you can benefit from the tax code, which may not be just all the time, but at least here's how you can use it to actually have something to bring back home. You know what I mean? To further whatever it is you're trying to do, whether you're just an employee or if you have your own business, helping them with their taxes. That's tawab. That's good stuff. So it says, what?
Here are the Romans tax loopholes.
Right. Right. You get so far beyond, your brackets just get smaller and smaller and smaller to where, you got, complete write-offs. As opposed to, I started in verse 43. I'm in Matthew chapter 5. Now I'm in 46. I'll read it again. It says, for what if ye love them which love you? What reward have ye? Do not even the publicans the same? Right? Or the tax collectors the same? It says in verse 47, and if ye salute your brethren only, what do ye more than others? Do not even the publicans so? Another way you'll hear this being phrased today when we're out there is like, listen, man, I only care about me and my people. I only care about me and my family, It's just like, what about your extended family? What about warning your other brothers and sisters? We'll get that a lot of times with the elders of our people, right? Where we'll be teaching and they'll be like, oh, I already know what you got there, brother. I already know about that. And it's like, well, when are you going to tell me? What are you going to tell, the rest of us? Elder, let's learn from you. Tell us what's going on. Tell us how to prepare for what's ahead since you've been around the block. And then they kind of go, oh, no. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you hoarding knowledge? Because so many people my age and younger, we need help from the older generation, right? Y'all done seen Esau and all his shades and colors and sizes, right? Help us out, right? But they want to hold on to whatever it is they think that they know.
What about groups? What about groups?
I don't know what you mean.
Israelite groups, camps.
Right.
Israelite groups and camps,
I don't know what you mean.
Sometimes like Israelite groups and camps, they only deal with their camps.
Oh, okay, I got what you're saying. Yeah, come. So it says, do not even the publicans so. Now here's verse 48. Check this out. Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. So there is red letters, right? Christ said this. Be perfect, right? So, people say, the Lord made nothing perfect. I'll quote that verse, right? Real quick, the other verse. But then Christ right here is saying, be perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. And what's perfection? How do we strive for that perfection? Because, we're going to fall short. But Christ is still saying what? To be perfect. You can link this with Psalms 19:7. Check this out. Because perfect is kind of like, it could be like the word love. Love, it becomes subjective. Love is what you make it. You say be perfect. People say, oh, yeah, perfect to me is doing X, Y, Z. Well, perfect to me is doing this, that, and the third. It's just like, hold on. We need a standard we can all agree upon. And the Bible is the key place to go to for that. So this is Psalms 19. In 7, Psalms 19:7, it says, the law of the Lord, or Yahweh, is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of Yahweh is sure, making wise the simple. See that? So that's what's perfect. That's the perfection that Christ is talking about. It's about meditating on and practicing the law. It's none of this subjective, your truth, my truth, share your truth. Speak your truth, sis. No, it's the truth. Is it or is it not? The Most High himself, his name is Yahweh. His name means he is. So Most High is about about reality. What is as opposed to what isn't. We're not about what isn't. We're about what is. We'll talk about what's real as opposed to what's just a falsehood or a lie. Okay. I could go on more, but that's all I wanted to read on dealing with your enemy, because that's what you have right now. We're going to be having this as we go through Samuel's. Brothers against brothers. We're going to see a lot of that as we go through Samuel's, as we see King Saul's decline and David's rise over these next couple chapters in Samuel. Just to make sure we keep that in mind, and then just try to learn from the two of them as far as how to deal when you're on both sides, right? Both sides of the coin, right? On the giving end or on the receiving end, right? Of evil at the hands of your brothers, and of course, even at the hands of enemies too, whenever it happens. But yeah, we'll make an end here. So we finished 1 Samuel chapters 18 and 19. So remember, and I'm going to send a screenshot out to folks that are on the group chat, just to make sure you guys got it. The High Holy Day chart for this month going all the way down to December 2022. So we did the Old Testament. I mean, next week we're going to go into the New Testament. The elder Zaquan, he's doing the New Testament, which is 2 Corinthians. We just finished 2 Corinthians. So that means we're going into Galatians chapters 1 and 2. So once again, Galatians 1 and 2 are going to be the readings for next week. And then back in the Apocrypha again, remember Kansamak, I'm not sure he's still going to be away, but he did 7 and 8 of First Maccabees before. That means not next week, but the week after, we're going to be doing 9 and 10. First Maccabees 9 and 10 after Galatians 1 and 2. And also remember, after Galatians 1 and 2, if we do that Sabbath service, that next Saturday sundown, we're going to be celebrating the feast of first fruits, or the day of Pentecost, right? Which we would have celebrated tonight initially, but we looked at the wheat report. It didn't come in. Usually we set a temporary time where we say we start counting the third week in May. Sometimes it can go take the first week of June. That's what ended up happening this time around, as far as when the wheat started first being harvested, at least here in North America, where most wheat is grown. So there's a chart that they come out with reports that keep track of the different harvests and what process that they're in. And it shows like the top like 10, 15 states that grow, you know, whether it's wheat or sorghum or rice or, you know, whatever it is. They keep track of where the wheat is at as far as the process. But yeah, they started harvesting the end of May going into June. So that's why we're keeping it next Sabbath sundown, which will be the 16th sundown. So look forward to that. Definitely send out reminders to the group about that too this upcoming week, just that we're aware for that day of Pentecost. And we can even do some we're gonna have it here, most times will. And we'll even go into some scriptures too, just as a review leading up to that this upcoming week. Probably touch on Acts 2 a little bit, if not during the weekly classes, definitely on the service, because there's still a lot of confusion out there, especially for our brothers and sisters that in the Pentecostal church, right, that think that to quote the 90s hip hop song, boom shakalaka, there goes the Chief Rocker. They think that boom shakalaka stuff, they think that's speaking in tongues, right? But you read the scriptures, that's not what they were doing. You could say, look, that right there, what you call speaking in tongues, and I read it in Acts chapter 2, when our people came together from all different places under heaven, Jews, right? They weren't doing that. It says they were speaking in the language wherein they were born. So they were actually speaking articulately in whatever language that they grew up in, and they could understand each other, even though it was their first time hearing that new language. So we were actually speaking legit languages. It wasn't this, bum shada da bum shay, right? And then you got the other pastor there in the church going, what he just said was, oh, God's gonna bring us a blessing this summer, right? Well, what he just said in the tongues is, make sure you pay the building fund by the end of the month. That's what he said in tongues, right? The Spirit's on me, that's translated for him. What that was, make sure you pay the pastor due too. Yes, I have the Spirit. The Spirit is telling me what he's saying. It's telling you to make sure you pay up.
But when somebody's speaking another language, you don't understand it. That sounds like boom shakalaka.
That's why I always do. That's why I always quote that song. That's what songs they're saying. Boom, boom, shakalaka. Yeah.
If I start speaking Korean right now, it's gonna sound boom shakalaka. I'm saying boom shakalaka.
Right, exactly. But you're speaking the actual language, not just gibberish. But we'll talk about it. These next couple classes, we'll touch on it. And the tougher part too, before we close out, is, and I've mentioned this before, is when you have folks that are in any denomination. In this case, we're talking about the Pentecostal denomination, right? Which is supposed to be based on Acts 2, but they don't understand what Acts 2 is actually going into. But they'll be a part of that, right? And then they might go through some kind of affliction, either them or somebody close to them, a family member or a friend. Because we had this scenario, right? For folks that came to the class where they had a family member or a friend. Did it again. They had a family member or a friend, right, that wasn't doing too well, right? And they were part of the same, Pentecostal church and whatnot. And then they went to them in the hospital. And they're praying over them in the hospital, right? The doctor came in, gave them, bad news or okay news, right? And they go into the hospital, and they start doing the boom shakalaka on them, right? Boom shakalaka, right? All that kind of stuff. Boom shakalaka, boom shake, right? And then a couple days later, they get better. So what happens? They get locked into the Pentecostal doctrine even more. Because now they think, oh, we were speaking in tongues. God answered our prayer. Not realizing that the devil can give out blessings too. Like you said, your favorite psalm, right? Psalm 37, Psalm 73, about not being envious of the wicked or their success. Right? You got atheists that'll come in, that'll go into a hospital room and be like, I say get better. Mind over matter. You make yourself better. It's a placebo. And the person gets better. And they're just like, I didn't heal you. I just told you to have mind over matter and make yourself better. That's why you got better. they're clueless too as to why the person actually got healed. But that can lock a person into that doctrine even more when they are delivered from said affliction. It makes it even more challenging because they think it was God that did it, the true and living God. But no, it's just the Most High has had it where that person got better. It wasn't because of the doctrine, but the person thinks it was because of the doctrine. And Satan is there on the side like, yeah, see that boom shakalaka stuff, that stuff works. See that atheism, mind over matter, that stuff works. See, yeah. See, that's good stuff. See, that's what healed you, right? And then they look at you and they go, yeah, what you got is good, but we got healing power too, right? See, God answers many denominations, right? It's not just one way to get to heaven. See, you got your Israelite stuff, but I got my Pentecostal stuff. We both can get healing, right? You do it your way, but I do it my way. We all serving the same God, right? And they fall into that confusion. That's why I said, sometimes the blessing could be a curse that a person gets when they don't know where it came from, So yeah, we'll talk about all those things. I think I saw somebody's hands up. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You got it.
Yeah, Exodus 7 and 12.
Exodus 7 and 12.
No, verse 11. Exodus 7 and 11. Then Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers, and the magicians of Egypt. They also did in like manner with their enchantments. For they cast down every man his rod, and they became serpents. But Aaron's rod swallowed up their rod. So they threw it on.
Right. We pulled that at camp not too long ago. Right. Just to show that, you got power, but from what source? That's good. So just because, it come to pass, a miracle come to pass, then you find out what they're into. It's like, whoa, that's not the truth. You got to step away from that. Because, we said it once, we'll say it again. Even the devil can give out blessings. I'm glad you said that. Let me, I'll read this one other verse too, just to go with that before we close out. This is Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 13. Deuteronomy 13, 1-5, right? On that same tip. So Deuteronomy 13 and 1, it reads, if there arise among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and give thee a sign or a wonder, and the sign or wonder come to pass. See that? You got folks that aren't dealing with the truth on the left-hand side, and they prophesy, because devils, they know things too. They know certain future events also. They don't know the ultimate truth, but they know more than the average bear, right? So they can show you stuff. Because why else would it be, otherwise it wouldn't be a temptation, right? For people to get into that stuff on the left-hand side for, to pursue their own lusts or to protect themselves from affliction. It says, the sign of wonder come to pass, whereof he spake unto thee, saying, let us go after other gods, which thou hast not known, and let us serve them. So see, that's the catch. The catch, you're going after a false doctrine, a false teaching. So-called Christianity, Islam, right? Kemet, atheism, right? Judaism, right? Which is, Bible-ish, but not the Bible either. It says in verse 3, thou shalt not hearken unto the words of that prophet, nor that dreamer of dreams. For Yahweh your power proveth you to know whether ye love Yahweh your power with all your heart, with all your souls. That's a proving ground to see if you're going to fall for that trap or not. Because they're saying stuff and it sounds good. It seems to make sense. Wow, it actually happened. But you see that they're not dealing with anything that's righteous. They're dealing with some kind of false spirit. It says in verse 4, ye shall walk after the Yahweh your power and fear him and keep his commandments and obey his voice. Ye shall serve him and cleave unto him. Right? It's like Christ said when we read earlier, be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. That's how you do it. Finally, in verse 5, and that prophet or that dreamer of dreams shall be put to death. because he has spoken to turn you away from Yahweh your power, which brought you out of the land of Egypt and redeemed you out of the house of bondage, to thrust thee out of the way, which the Lord thy God, or Yahweh thy power, commanded thee to walk in. So shalt thou put the evil away from the midst of thee. You see, we were talking about that last night, right? About Balaam and how he was hired by Balak, king of Moab, to curse Israel. He had power, right? When he tried to do it, the Most High showed him that I'm the true power. I'm the power above all. And he had to go back to the king of Moab and go, yo, you know, I can curse other folks that are just out here, out in these streets, like they say. I can't do that with these Israelites. These guys got a God that's like no other God. I can't curse them. You know, they got a hedge around them. You know, Numbers 23:23 is the famous verse we always quote. There is no enchantment against Jacob, no divination against Israel. But the only time that works against us is if we're in breach of contract with the Most High, right? Deuteronomy 28, Leviticus 26. We're not upholding those. That's when the nations can do all types of tricks and, machinations and jam us up. But once we start dealing with our Lord and Savior and dealing with the Most High according to truth, all this stuff has to fall down. Any trouble that we go through from that time going forward is between us and the Most High. And it's just there to prove us, right? Where those other nations are just a middle person. All right, so the true day of Pentecost we're going to be keeping, not the Pentecostal church teaching, right? Which is something else. All right, so we'll say a Shar Shabbat once again. Definitely enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully, weather is nice where you're at. But either way, even when it rains, like we just read in Matthew 5, I always make that comment. People say, "Oh, such a rainy day," and I say, "Yeah, well, at least the plants are happy today, right? Because they're getting, they're getting their mouth full, and they go, yeah, you never thought about it like that, right? Because sunny day for us, like a rainy day for the plants, right? Rainy day for them, they're like, oh yeah, yes, drink, So it's all, it's all about perspective, right? So with that,
let it not rain for a month. Everybody's begging for the rain.
Yeah, real talk, real talk. Yeah, that's true. All right, so with that, we'll do the closing prayers. Shar Shabbat, or Happy Sabbath. Malachat Tawab, good afternoon. Continue to watch and pray. These prophecies come to pass. All things like I said last night in the class. Matthew 24, Luke 21, Mark 13. Many shall come in Christ's name. Wars, rumors of wars, famines, pestilences, earthquakes in diverse places. Love of many waxing cold. All these things. Keep watching out for these things. Call them out as you see them. Show your family, show your friends, show your associates. These are all prophesied to come to pass from the Bible, right? From Christ. And to get yourselves ready for what's coming next. All right. So let's do the closing prayers. Someone close that, Baba Kushan. Probakate Hawa by Shimi Hawashai, Asharanat and now Paria, Gapan Tuara Aman. La Yawa by Shimi Hawashai, Yasha. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. Madwa, Panua Yerushalayim, stand and face Jerusalem. Yahweh Basham Yahushai Babakushai Shema Lanawe Ifed Yem Ifed Shalak Mike Allah Walla Allahayim Tazwadakim La Shema Ayo Barak Rapha Magan Lachaziyak Banya Yash'ala Washalak the Nawa Rabium Kakamad Rabium Da'ai Rabium Mayanad Rabium Sabalanwa Rabium Mama1 Rabium Aqua Rabium Mahabium Rabium Haganad Rabchanaya Wasalak Ko Katayam Nawa La Akim Wa Akiwap we are Shala Tam Ye Walam Basham Yehoshab the water Aman. English translation Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, please listen to us now, right now. Send Michael and the righteous powers to watch over, bless, heal, protect, and make strong the children of Israel. And send to us much wisdom, much knowledge, much understanding, much patience, much faith, much brotherhood, much love, much spiritual protection, and forgive all our sins. For the brothers, sisters in Israel, always and forever. In the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you, so be it. Four corners prayer. Yahweh Basham Yahweh Shai Barak Nawe Yash'ale Wabaf Yasapariam Shema Yasharale Yahweh Allah Nawe Yahweh Achet. English translation. Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, bless us in Israel in the house of books. And then we said, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. So once again, a Shar Shabbat, Malachah Tawab, enjoy the rest of the Sabbath day. Continue to watch and pray as these prophecies continue to come to pass, leading up to the second coming of our Lord and Savior, Yahweh Shai Mashiach. Shalom, Yasharallah.
Shalom, Yasharallah.